Ron was born in 1954, and honestly, the moment he opened his eyes, the room was already a set. His parents, Rance and Jean, were actors they literally met because of the craft. His dad, Rance, chose Howard as his stage name before joining the Air Force, and their marriage was this kind of beautiful, high-wire balancing act between military life and screen dreams. He made his screen debut at just 18 months old in a Western. Think about that. Before he was really talking, he was hitting his marks. His childhood wasn't about learning to walk. It was about learning where to stand under camera lights. When TV started moving west, the Howards packed up and drove straight to California. Not for the sunshine, but to be near the new center of the action. Ron was a toddler, but his proximity to producers and writers meant he was already on Playhouse 90 before he saw a school desk. This wasn't some stage parent horror story. Their goal was almost surgical, keeping the family. Rance meticulously managed their earnings, balancing his own 140-plus film jobs just to stay close, just to keep the structure around his son. Then came October 3rd, 1960. Ron was 6. That night, the whole world met Opie Taylor on the Andy Griffith Show. Now, here's the secret. That connection wasn't just written in a script. Rance had challenged the producers after an early reading. He told them the father-son scenes felt completely fake. Andy Griffith listened. They shook hands on something real. The relationship between Andy and Opie would mirror Ron and Rance's own genuine bond. That simple handshake became the soul of the show. Ron lived his whole childhood inside that small-town story, one where love, work, and adult expectations were all mixed together. Their house in Burbank wasn't a star palace. They ate meatloaf and fish sticks and saved money, like anyone who knew it could all disappear tomorrow. But the rules were strict. His parents were his guardians. Ron played park league sports when he wasn't memorizing lines. The way he worked wasn't the result of child star instinct. It was training. Rance taught him how to listen, how to pause, how to respond like a person, not a performer. The producer of the Andy Griffith Show noticed it. Right away, Ron didn't try to be cute. He just told the truth. Even when he was losing baby teeth and fans were stopping him for autographs, his childhood was quietly slipping away. He later called those years a golden cage, safe but completely sealed off. The most profound moment came in 1963, in the episode Opie the Birdman. 9-year-old Ron had to film the scene where Opie raises orphan baby birds after accidentally killing their mother. There were no dramatic tricks. He just stood there, breathing, blinking, letting real emotion lead. Andy Griffith called his timing adult level. Ron was using something called substitution. If the scene called for sadness, he'd think of something that actually hurt, and then he'd let it go when the camera stopped. That kind of control is rare for any actor, let alone a kid. But he was still alone. His classroom was a tiny space near stage 40. He did math while Grips rolled dollies, and at lunch, he sat with his dad or the prop guy. Andy would play guitar, and Don Knotts told clean jokes. They tried to make it feel normal, but he missed neighborhood bike rides and sandlot baseball. He felt it, even if he didn't complain. Then came The Music Man in 1962. He was 8 and cast in a big-budget musical. There was one terrifying problem. He was tone-deaf and had 2 left feet. During a soft shoe routine, Ron panicked, whispering to Shirley Jones, "I can't do it, Shirley. I can't do it." She helped him calm down, and the crew shot him from the knees up, adding the tap sounds later. It worked. His shy, sweet performance was a massive hit. But here's the part no one saw. Between takes, Ron was memorizing everyone's lines, including Shirley Jones's. He would act out full scenes with dolls, directing the miniature actors through their marks and lines. To others, it looked like play. To Shirley, it looked like a director in the making. His dad, Rance, was already writing scripts for the Flintstones, teaching Ron how to break down a scene, how to understand the why behind every word. Those lessons didn't vanish. They were just buried until Ron directed his first feature, Grand Theft Auto, at only 23. In 1966, he tried a Western called The Monroes, filmed in the Wyoming Rockies. It was rough, real terrain, and he learned horseback riding from ranch hands. The series only lasted 26 episodes. Ron was 13, and for the first time, he felt that sting of rejection he genuinely thought was his fault. A couple of years later, the Brady Bunch pilot came calling. Ron was offered an audition, and he turned it down, not because he didn't want it, but because of a rule his parents made. One of them had to be home every day between 9 a.m. and 6 p.m. They wanted balance. They wanted him to grow up normal. He passed on Brady Bunch, and it might have been the best non-choice of his life. In 1974, he was just 19 when he walked into Gary Marshall's office and completely changed his trajectory. He walked into the audition for Happy Days and didn't read the lines like the others. He just sat down and ordered a cherry phosphate like he belonged there. The chemistry with Henry Winkler was instant. ABC doubted him, thinking the kid from Mayberry couldn't pass for a teenager. Marshall pushed back, and Ron got the role, beating out 35 other actors, not by acting louder, but by sounding exactly like someone who'd help your grandmother with groceries. He did 255 episodes, but by season 5 in 1977, he was 23, playing a cheerful kid frozen in time while the real world was burning outside. Vietnam was everywhere. It didn't make sense that Richie Cunningham never noticed. So, Ron wrote a 3-page memo to ABC. He asked for real topics. He pitched a story about Richie facing the draft. They said no. Too political. Too risky for advertisers. The compromise was tiny. A passing glance at a newspaper about the war, a whispered comment about deferments. That small compromise, that quiet pushback, was a final clue that Ron Howard wasn't just ready to act. He was ready to tell his own stories, the true ones. He told TV Guide he felt stifled, that he couldn't breathe, being the happy teenager, when the world outside was anything but felt like a lie. That deep, grinding frustration planted a seed. He didn't just want to act anymore. He wanted control. He wanted to direct. By 1976, the Fonz was everywhere a $50 million merchandise machine. ABC, drunk on success, tried to rename the show Fonzie's Happy Days. Ron had seen his father, Rance, fight for billing his whole career, and now it was his turn. He was making $15,000 an episode, but he walked into the office and told them he'd quit. He gave them 48 hours to keep the title as it was, threatening a $500,000 contract breach lawsuit. Gary Marshall sided with him, recognizing the show was about a family, not just a catchphrase. ABC backed down, though Fonzie did get top billing. Ron called it a silent win. Then, in October 1977, he got his shot, directing a date with Fonzie. The budget was tiny, $10,000, and he had to shoot 32 scenes in 3 days. He showed up with a shot list so detailed the crew joked it was Spielberg level. He pulled off a 90-second tracking shot following Fonzie through Arnold's Diner in just 2 takes, saving $3,000. The ratings jumped by $12%. 31 million people watched. The studio gave him 2 more episodes, plus an extra $2,500 fee. Henry Winkler later confessed that Ron made him uncomfortable in the best way. He forced them to tap into real emotion instead of just hitting their comedic marks. All of this was happening because of a backroom deal. In 1976, Ron acted in a cheap teen crash movie called Eat My Dust for Roger Corman, but he only agreed if Corman let him direct the next one. That next film was Grand Theft Auto, which he co-wrote with his dad, Rance, and directed. The budget was meager, $600 to $1,000, but it brought back $15 million $2 for a $100% return. They destroyed 70 cars on camera, including a $40,000 Rolls-Royce, and Ron, ignoring permits, shot on real roads. He even cast his mother, his brother Clint, and Marion Ross from Happy Days. When the film hit theaters in 1977, no one was laughing at the redhead from Mayberry anymore. Ron was a filmmaker. The steady anchor through all this chaos was Cheryl Alley. They were high school sweethearts, marrying in 1975 when he was only 21. He proposed on a couch at his parents' house, and Henry Winkler was his best man. When Cheryl went into labor with their first child, he dropped everything on set and rushed to the hospital. He said it plainly. Cheryl was and always had been the real story. While he wrote, filmed and directed, she was the one holding it all together. In 1982, he took a risk with Night Shift, a dark comedy about running a prostitution ring out of a morgue. It starred Henry Winkler and introduced the world to Michael Keaton. It made $21 million and proved he could make bold studio pictures. But the real breakthrough was Splash in 1984. It was a love story about a man and a mermaid, and it became Disney's first touchstone release. It grossed nearly $70 million. Daryl Hannah, in a $35 LB Mermaid Tale, swam better than the professionals. The original ending was sad. Madison goes back to the ocean. Alan stays on land. But during test screenings, every single wife in the room hated it. So they changed it. Alan dives in after her. Love wins. That moment, that decision to prioritize emotional satisfaction over literary melancholy, confirmed something for Ron. He could lead the box office with heart. After Splash, Ron and producer Brian Grazer co-founded Imagine Entertainment in 1985. This wasn't a hobby. It was serious. They went public, signed deals with TriStar and Showtime. Their offices in Century City got a massive makeover, and while people whispered about the spending, the numbers silenced them. Over the decades, Imagine Films would earn more than $15 billion worldwide. Then came Apollo 13 in 1995. This film nearly took his life. He bought actual NASA mission control panels for $1 from government surplus and refused to fake anything. They filmed 612 zero-gravity scenes aboard the Vomit Comet, each lasting just 23 seconds. That meant 10 straight days of intense parabolic flight dives. Ron worked 18-hour days for 90 straight days. He was immersed, watching every reel, leading night rehearsals. On day 90, he collapsed. Dehydration, severe hypertension. The set went silent. Production stopped for 36 hours. When he returned, the crew wore shirts that simply read Mission Control. He had buried Opie Taylor completely. The film made $355 million worldwide and won 2 Oscars, but the cost was personal. He made a mistake with EDTV in 1999, which cost Imagine $30 million in losses. He had famously turned down Cast Away for it, and it came out right after The Truman Show, which told the same story better. Critics panned it. Ron learned. He listened, and he moved on. By 2001, he was directing A Beautiful Mind, and he had a different approach. He wanted the audience to feel what John Nash felt. He filmed Nash's hallucinations of Charles Herman, William Parcher with no visual cues, no special effects, no warning. To the audience, they felt real because to Nash, they were. This was the moment Ron Howard stopped simply telling a story and started truly placing the viewer inside a mind. It was about silence, about trust, about shared vulnerability. He wanted us, the viewers, to discover the truth about John Nash at the same exact moment Nash did. That's why he shot nearly the entire film chronologically. He went back to Princeton 3 times just to get the feeling right. The result? He won the Oscar for Best Director in 2002. But the deeper truth beneath A Beautiful Mind wasn't just Nash's. It was his, too. Scattered throughout those award-winning edits and smooth setups were pieces of Ron's own quiet pain, his regret, and the pressure he'd lived under for decades. Yes, the movie won 4 Oscars and pulled in $313 million, even if critics pointed out the convenient omissions in the affairs, The Abandoned Son. He proved a story could still win hearts even if it trimmed the sharpest, most painful edges off reality. Just 5 years later, he was staring down a different kind of chaos. Directing the Da Vinci Code required a $125 million budget and 0 cooperation from the Catholic Church. Notre Dame and Westminster Abbey both slammed their doors shut. His team had to digitally recreate entire churches. They were even off by centimeters on the virtual coordinates for St. Sulpice, forcing him to refilm Westminster scenes in small cathedrals that charged him a fortune for the privilege. He shot the Louvre scenes only at night, demanding 5 fake copies of the Mona Lisa because he couldn't put any lights on the real one. The movie grossed $758 million worldwide. The numbers looked easy. The process was always brutal. Around that time, he was dealing with a quiet grief. His father, Rance the man who was in nearly everything, who taught him how to listen and how to act, passed away in 2017. He was a Depression-era farm boy who changed everything by chasing a dream. The man who had shaped Ron's entire childhood and who Ron called his mentor was gone. In 2008, Ron delivered one of his most complex films, Frost/Nixon, capturing a quiet, high-stakes war between the interviewer and the former president. He watched every piece of archival footage, studying every twitch, every pause, every breath. When Frank Langella finally delivered Nixon's infamous line, "I let the American people down," it landed like a thunderclap. It earned 5 Oscar nominations. Yet, despite the acclaim, it was one of the rare Best Picture nominees that actually lost money. The art was perfect, but the business failed. They raised 4 kids, and while Ron juggled sets and studios, Cheryl was the constant. When their oldest, Bryce Dallas, was 5, Ron did something he later called his biggest regret. He directed her school play. He meant well, but it pushed her into acting before she could choose it for herself. Years later, he had to apologize to her. He learned that painful lesson and stepped back, letting his other children find their own paths. But the most devastating pain came from his brother, Clint. Clint had been a child actor, too, and the business hadn't treated him kindly. By the 1980s, Clint fell deep into cocaine and alcohol addiction. By 1990, he was at rock bottom. Ron was forced to deliver the truth, go to rehab, or lose the relationship. Clint chose life. In their memoir, The Boys, Ron admitted he carried a piece of guilt he worried his own spectacular rise had made Clint feel left behind. Then came the decision that truly haunts him. In 1991, his daughter Jocelyn was born. Just 1 year later, Ron left for 6 months to film far and away in Ireland. It was the longest he had ever been away from Cheryl, from Bryce, and from his newborn. When he finally came home, Jocelyn had changed so much she barely knew him. Bryce hardly remembered him. Cheryl had been parenting alone. That moment, that profound disconnect, shook him to his core. He promised he would never take long, international shoots again, and he mostly kept that promise. But he broke it in 2005. Cinderella Man needed extensive reshoots. He missed more time with his family. Decades later, on their 50th wedding anniversary in 2025, Ron donated a simple bench to John Burroughs High School, where they first met. It was a quiet confession. He still regretted missing so much. Nancy just nodded. The no-work rule still stood, but she wished he had seen the cost sooner. He kept going, of course. In 2020, he directed Hillbilly Elegy for Netflix, which was torn apart by critics. He even got a Razzie nomination. But the very same year, he directed Rebuilding Paradise, a documentary about the devastating 2018 Camp Fire. His own mother-in-law had lived in that town. The footage, the stories of the 85 people who died, and the 14,000 homes destroyed, broke him. He called it the hardest project he'd ever done. He filmed for over a year, refusing to look away from the raw destruction. Yet, even in 2025, the risks were still causing anxiety. His survival thriller, Eden, made just $1 million on a $55 million budget. He'd already been close to quitting once, back in 2018, when Solo, a Star Wars story, completely collapsed around him. He had to take over mid-shoot after the original directors were fired and red-hot $70 of the film. It bombed. He later confessed publicly that Solo almost ended his directing career. It was Bryce, his daughter, who pulled him back. By 2025, Ron had been married 50 years, co-run Imagine for 40, and amassed a net worth over $200 million. He credits his dad for teaching him to stay humble. He still tells stories. And he still remembers that simple bench, the empty seat at the dinner table, and the baby who barely recognized him. He remembers the cost of being Ron Howard.